Jayab looked at the small blue planet through the window of her ship. Earth, the home of humans. Her new research subject for the next year. She smoothed down her white coat and checked that her skin color modifier was working correctly. To human eyes, she would look just like them, though her real skin had a slight purple shade. "Remember the mission rules," said Do-hyun, her supervisor. He did not smile. Celestians never smiled. "Watch them. Study them. Do not interact more than needed. Humans are primitive. Their emotions make them unpredictable." Jaya nodded. On her world, emotions were seen as a weakness. Celestians had moved past feelings long ago. They lived by logic and facts. It made them the most advanced beings in this part of space. "I understand," Jaya said. "I will follow all rules." 3 days later, Jaya walked down a busy street in Seoul. She wore human clothes and carried a small device that recorded everything she saw. Humans moved all around her. They talked loudly. They laughed. Some looked angry. Others looked sad. So many feelings on their faces. A small boy ran past her, chasing a ball. He was crying because he had fallen, but he was also laughing as he ran. How could he feel two things at once? Jaya wrote this down in her notes. She stopped at a small shop that sold music. Inside, a woman was playing a guitar. The sound made Jaya feel something strange in her chest. She stood very still, listening. "You like classical guitar?" asked the shop owner. Jaya had practiced what to say. "Yes, it is. Nice." "Nice? It's beautiful. Kim Min-jae is the best guitarist in the city. Here, take this." The woman handed Jaya a small disc. "It's her latest album. First customer of the day gets a free gift." Jaya took the disc. "Thank you." This was not part of her plan. Taking gifts from humans was not allowed, but the music had done something to her. Made her feel something. She put the disc in her bag. That night, in her small apartment, Jaya listened to the music. She closed her eyes. Her heart beat faster. Was this what humans called being moved? She made notes about her reaction, telling herself it was part of her research. The next day, Jaya went to a park. Humans sat on benches, reading books. Children played games. An old man fed birds. Jia sat down and watched them all. A group of young people spread a blanket on the grass. They shared food and drinks. They talked and laughed. One of them noticed Jaya watching. He waved. "Want to join us? We have plenty of food." Jaya knew she should say no, but something made her stand up and walk over. "I'm Hyun-ki," said the young man who had waved. "These are my friends." "I am Jia," she said, using her human name. For 2 hours, Jia sat with the humans. They asked where she was from. She told the story she had been given. She was a student from a small town, studying in the city. They told her about their lives. One was an artist. One worked in an office. Hyun-ki wrote stories. "What kind of stories?" Jaya asked. "Science fiction," he said. "Stories about space and aliens." He laughed. Funny, right? When Jaya went home, she had a small book in her bag. Hyun-ki had given it to her. "My first published work," he had said. "Not many people have read it." Jaya knew she should throw it away. Instead, she read it all night. The story was about a human who found an alien who had crashed on Earth. The human helped the alien, even though it was dangerous. In the end, they became friends. Jaya felt water in her eyes as she read the last page. This was not supposed to happen. Celestians did not cry. Over the next few weeks, Jaya collected more human things. A painting from a street artist. A small plant for her window. More music discs. She kept them all hidden when Do-hyun called to check on her work. "You seem distracted," he said during one call. "Is everything functioning correctly?" "Yes," Jaya lied. "The research is going well." But things were not going as planned. Jaya found herself looking forward to human interactions. She visited the music shop every week. She went to the park hoping to see Hyun-ki and his friends. She watched human movies and found herself laughing at their jokes. One night, after watching a sad movie, Jaya looked in the mirror and saw tears on her face. Celestians did not cry, but she was crying. She touched the wet tears with her fingers. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. The next day, Jaya received a message from Do-hyun. "We have noticed unusual patterns in your research. Your focus seems to be shifting from observation to participation. This is concerning. Remember, humans are subjects of study, not equals. Their emotional nature is primitive compared to our logical evolution." Jaya looked around her apartment. She had hidden her human treasures inside a wall panel. Books, music, a painting, a small plant, even some human food she had begun to enjoy. "I understand," she replied to Do-hyun. "I will correct my approach." That night, Jaya sat alone in her apartment. She should throw away all the human things. She should focus only on her research. That was the logical thing to do. Instead, she took out Hyun-ki's book and began reading it again. She played the guitar music. She ate a human sweet food called chocolate. And for the first time, she wrote in her personal log what she could never tell Do-hyun or any other Celestian. "I find myself drawn to humans in ways I cannot explain. Their emotions are not primitive, they are rich and complex. They live fully in ways we have forgotten. And I want to learn more. I want to feel more. I cannot help myself." 6 months had passed since Jaya first arrived on Earth. Her small apartment no longer looked like the clean, empty space she had started with. The walls that were once bare now held paintings and pictures. Shelves that once held only research equipment now carried books, small toys, and plants. Music played softly as Jaya sat on her floor, surrounded by human objects. She picked up a small music box and opened it. A tiny dancer spun as the music played. Jaya had found it at a market 3 weeks ago. The seller told her it was very old. Jaya liked to think about all the human hands that had held it before hers. Her communication device beeped. It was a message from home. Jaya quickly closed the music box and hid it under her bed with the other things she didn't want seen. She touched the device. "Jaya, your reports are becoming less frequent," said Do-hyun's voice. "The council is concerned. Your last 3 reports focused too much on human art and not enough on their technology and social structures." "I am studying all aspects of human culture," Jaya said carefully. "Art and music are important to understand their minds. Perhaps, but remember your purpose. You are not there to enjoy their primitive expressions. You are there to study them objectively." After Do-hyun's face disappeared, Jaya looked around her room. She knew she should be more careful, but she couldn't stop herself from wanting more human experiences. The next day, Jaya went to a place called an art studio. She had met Taeho there 3 months ago. He painted pictures and taught others how to paint. When Jaya first walked in, she told him she wanted to learn about human art for research. Now she came every week. "Jaya, you're late today," Taeho said when she walked in. His hands were covered in paint. Blue and green paint also marked his face where he had rubbed it without thinking. "I had a call from home," Jaya said. She had told Taeho she was from a small country far away. It wasn't exactly a lie. "Well, you're just in time. We're trying something new today." Taeho pointed to a large table covered with paper and paint. No brushes, just hands. Jaya looked at the paint. On her world, getting dirty was considered uncivilized. "We use our hands." "Yes, feel the paint. Connect with it." Taeho dipped his fingers in red paint and dragged them across paper. "Try it." Jaya slowly put her fingers into yellow paint. It felt cold and smooth. She touched the paper and made a line. Then another, and another. Soon, she was using all her fingers, mixing colors, making shapes with no plan or purpose. Taeho watched her with a smile. Look at you. You're a natural. Jaya felt something bubble up inside her chest. She was laughing. Really laughing. She hadn't planned to. It just happened. After painting, Taiho invited her to get food. They sat in a small restaurant as Jaya tried a new dish called bibimbap. So tell me more about your home, Taiho said. You never talk about it. Jaya looked down at her food. It is very different from here. Different how? We don't have art like you do, or music. Jaya pushed the rice around. We don't feel things the way humans do. Taiho laughed. You say humans like you're not one. Jaya realized her mistake. I mean, people in my country. We are taught to control emotions, to be logical. That sounds sad, Taiho said. Emotions are what make life worth living. That night, Jaya wrote in her secret journal. Taiho says emotions make life worth living. On Celestia, we believe emotions make life chaotic and unproductive. But I have laughed today. I have felt joy looking at colors. I have felt friendship. These feelings do not seem primitive. They seem important. Over the next weeks, Jaya collected more human experiences. She went to a concert and felt music so loud it moved through her body. She watched a sad movie in a theater and cried openly, surrounded by humans who also cried. She tried 10 different kinds of ice cream with Taiho and decided chocolate was her favorite. Each night, she wrote about these experiences in her journal. Each morning, she sent brief, factual reports to Do-hyun that mentioned nothing about her growing love for human life. Then one day, Jaya returned to her apartment and found the door open. Inside stood Subin, her research partner who was supposed to be monitoring another city. Subin, why are you here? Jaya asked, trying to stay calm. Subin stood in the middle of the room, holding Jaya's journal. The wall panel where Jaya hid her treasures was open. Human books, music discs, and art pieces were spread on the floor. The council sent me to check on you, Subin said. Her voice was flat, without emotion, the way a proper Celestian should speak. Your reports have been concerning. Now I see why. I can explain, Jaya said. This is just research. I'm learning about humans by experiencing their culture. Subin picked up a painting Jaya had made with Taiho. This is not research. This is contamination. You've let yourself become infected by human emotions. That's not true, Jaya said, but her voice shook. Look at yourself, Subin said. You're showing emotion right now. Fear, shame. These are not Celestian traits. Jaya felt her face grow hot. She was showing emotion. She couldn't stop it anymore. Subin put down the painting. I sent images of all this to the council. They're very concerned. This is dangerous cultural contamination. Jia, you're becoming more human than Celestian. Is that really so bad? Jaya asked quietly. Subin looked shocked. You can't mean that. Humans are ruled by their emotions. They fight wars over feelings. They make decisions based on what feels good rather than what is logical. We evolved past that centuries ago. But they also create beautiful things. They connect with each other. They live fully. Subin shook her head. The council wants you home. Immediately. They fear you may be too contaminated already. After Subin left, Jia sat among her human treasures. She picked up the small music box and opened it. As the tiny dancer spun, Jaya made a decision. She would have to leave Earth soon. But before she did, she wanted to experience as much human life as possible. She picked up her communication device and messaged Taiho. Can we meet tomorrow? There are so many human things I still want to try. Jaya knew she had only 3 days left on Earth. The Celestian ship would arrive soon to take her home. Home to a world without music, without art, without the free flow of emotions that had become so important to her. Subin watched her closely now, making sure she packed up her research materials and prepared to leave. The council expects you to undergo emotional purification when we return, Su-bin told her during breakfast. They believe they can reverse the human contamination. Jaya nodded but said nothing. She had made a plan, a dangerous plan. That afternoon, while Su-bin was reporting to their superiors, Jaya sent a message to a local news station. She had been watching a human journalist named Yana who did stories about different cultures. Jaya wrote that she was a researcher from a very distant place who had important things to share about human culture before she left. To her surprise, Yana replied within an hour. They agreed to meet the next day. Jaya spent the night hiding her most precious human treasures in a small box. She couldn't take them home, but she couldn't bear to throw them away. She would give them to Taiho to keep for her. The next morning, Jaya told Su-bin she needed to say goodbye to some research contacts. Su-bin looked suspicious but allowed her to go alone. Be back by sunset, Su-bin warned. And remember, no emotional displays. Jaya met Yana at a quiet cafe. The journalist was younger than Jaya expected, with kind eyes and a quick smile. Thank you for meeting me, Jaya said. What I have to say is difficult. Yana set up a small camera on their table. Take your time. Just speak from your heart. Heart. Humans always talked about their hearts, though the real organ had nothing to do with emotions. Jaya had learned it was their way of talking about deep feelings. My name is Jaya, she began carefully. I came to Earth to study humans. I'm not from here. I'm not human. Yana's eyes widened, but she didn't interrupt. My people, the Celestians, live very far from here. We are advanced in many ways, but we lost something important long ago. We stopped feeling emotions. We decided they were primitive and unnecessary. Jaya took a deep breath. I was sent here to study humans, to learn about your technology and social systems, but something happened that I didn't expect. I began to feel things. Music made me happy. Sad stories made me cry. I made friends. Real friends. Yana leaned forward. Are you saying you're an alien who's been living among us? Yes. My real appearance is different. I use technology to look human. Jaya touched her wrist, where her skin modifier was hidden. But that's not what's important. What's important is what I've learned. And what's that? Yana asked softly. Jaya looked directly at the camera. Humans are not primitive because you feel emotions. You are brave. You live with pain and joy and fear and love, and you create beautiful things from those feelings. My people think we're superior because we removed emotions from our lives. But we're not. We're empty. Tears began to fall down Jaya's face. Yes, I crave humans, and I can't help myself. I crave your music, your art, your friendship, your way of experiencing life fully. I'm addicted to the way humans feel things so deeply and honestly. Jaya wiped her tears. My people are coming to take me home tomorrow. They'll try to fix me, to remove these emotions I've learned. But I don't want to be fixed. I want to keep these feelings. Yana seemed stunned. Can you prove you're not human? Jaya hesitated, then slowly turned off her skin modifier. Her skin shifted to its natural light purple color. Yana gasped, but didn't run away. I'm still the same person, Jaya said, turning the modifier back on. That's another thing I've learned. What matters isn't how we look or where we come from. It's how we connect with others. After the interview, Jaya met Taiho in the park. She gave him the box of treasures and a letter explaining everything. I don't understand, he said. You're leaving tomorrow. Why so suddenly? I have to go home, Jaya said. But I wanted you to know that you changed me. Your friendship showed me what it means to really live. That night, when Jaya returned to her apartment, Su-bin was waiting with a cold, angry face. What have you done? Su-bin demanded, showing Jaya a screen. On it was Yama's interview, already spreading across human internet. You've exposed us. You've violated every rule. I told the truth, Jaya said simply. The council is furious. This interview is spreading everywhere. Humans are asking questions. Some believe you. Some think it's a joke. But it's causing chaos. Jaya felt afraid, but also strangely free. I'm not sorry. The next morning, as they prepared to meet the ship, Subin showed Jaya messages from home. Celestians were watching the interview too. Many were angry and called Jaya sick or contaminated. But some, a small but growing number, were curious. They wanted to know more about these human emotions that had so changed Jaya. They're calling it human emotional dependency syndrome, Subin said with disgust. They think it's a disease that infected your mind. Maybe it is, Jaya said, but it's a disease that makes life better, not worse. As they walked to the meeting point, Jaya's communication device beeped with a message. It wasn't from Do-hyun or anyone she knew. It was anonymous. The message was simple. You are not alone. Many of us feel it too. We are waiting for you at home. Jaya smiled as she looked up at the sky, ready to face whatever came next. The journey back to Celestia took 3 weeks. Jia spent most of this time alone in her small room on the ship. Subin and the other crew members avoided her. They treated her like she had a dangerous sickness that might spread to them. On the final day of travel, Jaya looked out her window at the purple-blue planet below. Celestia. Once she had been proud to call it home. Now she felt only fear about what waited for her there. When the ship landed, guards met Jia at the door. They did not speak as they led her through empty halls to a small white room. They told her to wait for the council. Jaya sat alone for hours. Finally, the door opened. A tall Celestian in formal clothes walked in. I am Junseo from the Science Council, he said. His voice was flat. Like all proper Celestians, I need to ask you some questions about your condition. Jaya expected anger or disgust, but Junseo's questions were different from what she thought they would be. When did you first notice emotional responses? He asked. Which human art forms affected you most strongly? Did you experience physical changes along with emotional ones? After many questions, Jaya became frustrated. Why are you asking these things? Are you trying to cure me? Junseo looked at the door, then lowered his voice. Not exactly. Please, continue answering honestly. When the questions finished, Junseo stood to leave. As he walked past Jia, he dropped something into her lap. A small music player, like the ones humans use. Hide this, he whispered, so quietly she barely heard. You are not alone. That night in her room, Jaya listened to the music player with small earpieces, but it didn't play music. Instead, she heard voices, Celestian voices, speaking with emotion. We are the feeling ones, said a voice. We are Celestians who have discovered what was hidden from us. You are not sick, Jaya. You are awake. The next day, Jaya was taken to a large room where 5 council members sat behind a tall desk. They looked down at her with cold faces. Jaya, you have been diagnosed with human emotional dependency syndrome, said one council member. You will begin treatment today. Before we start, Jaya said, I want to know something. Why do we fear emotions so much? What happened to our people? The council members looked at each other. That information is not relevant to your treatment. I think it is, Jaya said. Her voice was stronger now. I think all Celestians should know. Suddenly, the door opened. Junseo walked in with 3 other Celestians. She is right. It is time for truth. The council stood up, angry. This is not allowed. Guards. But no guards came. Instead, more Celestians entered the room. Some Jaya recognized as important scientists and teachers. We are the feeling ones, Junseo announced. For years, we have studied human culture in secret. We have allowed ourselves to feel again. And we have discovered the truth that you hide. Junseo turned to Jia. 2,000 years ago, our planet faced a terrible war. Millions died because of hate and fear and greed. Our leaders decided emotions were to blame. They created a way to remove emotions from our people through medicine and teaching. They thought they were saving us. This is dangerous talk, a council member said. You will all be arrested. No, said Junseo. Not today. Because today we have proof. He pointed to a screen on the wall. Look. The screen showed a human standing in the Celestian landing area. It was Tahoe. He stood surrounded by guards, but he did not look afraid. How did a human get here? Jaya asked, shocked. He came looking for you, Junseo said. He found a way to send a message to our science center. He said he needed to speak for his friend. On the screen, Tahoe was being led into the building. We have been studying human brains and Celestian brains, Junseo continued. We found something important. We did not lose our ability to feel. It was turned off, like a light switch. Meeting humans can turn it back on. The door opened, and Tahoe walked in with 2 guards. His eyes found Jia immediately. He smiled, though he looked tired from his long journey. Tahoe. Jia couldn't help calling his name. How did you get here? Why did you come? When I read your letter, I knew I had to help, Tahoe said. It took some work, but I found a way to send a message to your people. Some of them answered. Junseo nodded. We brought him here to speak to the council, to help them understand what we have learned. The council members looked at Tahoe with cold eyes. This human has no place here, one said. Tahoe stepped forward. I came because Jaya showed me that different worlds can learn from each other. You think emotions make us weak, but they don't. They connect us. They help us understand each other. Emotions caused wars on our world, a council member said. Wars happen on Earth too, Tahoe admitted. But emotions also give us art and music and love. They give life meaning. Junseo turned to the screen again. It showed brain scans now. These are Celestian brains before and after exposure to human art and culture. The emotional centers wake up. This is not a disease. It's recovery. One of the council members looked troubled. If what you say is true, then we have been missing a part of life for centuries. Yes, Jaya said. I thought humans were primitive because they felt so much. Now I know they preserved something precious that we threw away. In the days that followed, Jaya and Tahoe spoke to many Celestian scientists. The Feeling Ones group grew larger as more Celestians learned the truth. Some were afraid of emotions and stayed away, but many were curious. It will take time, Junseo told Jaya, as they walked through a garden. Our people have feared emotions for so long, but now we have a chance to become whole again. Jaya looked at Tahoe, who was showing a group of young Celestians how to draw with colored sticks. They watched with careful interest, their faces showing tiny hints of wonder. Humans aren't primitive for feeling, Jaya said. They're brave for continuing to feel despite knowing it can hurt. And now we can learn to be brave too, Junseo said, and for the first time, Jaya saw him smile. 2 years had passed since Jaya's return to Celestia. The world she now lived in was very different from the one she had left behind when she first went to Earth. Jaya stood at the front of a large room filled with both Celestians and humans. Today was the opening of the first official human Celestian cultural center. Jia, now the official ambassador between the 2 worlds, smiled as she looked at the crowd. When I first went to Earth, she began, I thought I was studying a primitive species. I was wrong. Humans had kept something my people had lost, the ability to feel deeply, to create from those feelings, and to connect through them. Today we begin a new chapter for both our worlds. In the front row sat Tahoe, who now spent half of each year on Celestia teaching art. Beside him was Junseo, who led the Celestian Emotional Recovery Program. The program helped Celestians safely experience feelings again after centuries of suppression. Not all Celestians wanted to change. The old council had fought against what they called emotional contamination. But they couldn't stop the truth from spreading, especially after scientific tests showed that emotions actually made Celestians healthier, not weaker. After the ceremony, Jaya walked with Tahoe through the new center. One room held art made by Celestians who were learning to express feelings. The art was simple but powerful, first attempts at sharing inner worlds that had been locked away for generations. "Look at Han Jun's painting," Tahoe said, pointing to a swirl of blue and purple. 2 months ago, he couldn't even hold a brush without shaking. Now he's creating something beautiful. Han Jun had been one of the strongest voices against emotion. Now he led a painting class for young Celestians. "It's like watching children learn to walk," Jaya said. "Except these are 1,000-year-old children." In another room, human musicians played with Celestian sound engineers. Together, they created music that could not have existed on either world alone. Celestian technology could capture and shape sound in ways humans had never imagined. Human emotion gave the sounds meaning and power. Min Su said their new album has been requested by 3 other space-traveling species. Tahoe told Jita. They'd never shown interest in either human or Celestian culture before. This was another surprise. Other advanced beings were now looking at Earth with new respect. For centuries, humans had been seen as too emotional, too unpredictable to be valuable partners in the wider universe. Now those same qualities made them special. "The Zatharians have asked for human poets to visit their world," Jaya said. "They said they've been emotionally static for too long. They want to learn what we're learning." As they walked, Jaya noticed a group of young Celestians laughing together. Actual laughter, once forbidden as a sign of emotional weakness. A few older Celestians watched with worried faces, but most people just went about their business. Change was happening, slowly but surely. That evening, Jaya visited her parents' home. When she first returned from Earth, they had been afraid of her new emotional ways. Her mother had cried when Jaya was declared contaminated by the old council. It was the first time Jaya had ever seen her mother show emotion. Now her parents were different. Not fully changed. They were too old for complete transformation, but softer around the edges. Her father had plants in the house now. Her mother had started listening to gentle human music. "We have a surprise for you," her mother said when Jaya arrived. Jaya's father brought out a small cake, similar to ones Jaya had enjoyed on Earth. It wasn't perfect. Celestians were still learning about human food. But the effort touched Jaya deeply. "You made this for me?" she asked. "We tried," her father said. His face showed a small, careful smile. "Your mother found a recipe in the human database." Jaya felt tears come to her eyes. Once, she would have hidden them. Now she let her parents see. "Thank you. This means so much to me." Later that night, Jaya sat in her apartment, which now looked much like her Earth home had, full of art, plants, and music. She opened her old journal and read her first entries from Earth. She had been so confused then, so afraid of the feelings growing inside her. Her communication device beeped. It was a message from Do Hyun, her old supervisor. For months after Jaya's return, Do Hyun had avoided her. But recently, he had started asking questions about human culture. "I visited the music room today," his message read. "I listened to something called classical piano. It made me feel something. I don't have words for it yet, but I want to feel it again. Is that normal?" Jaya smiled as she wrote back, "Completely normal. That feeling is just the beginning." A soft knock came at her door. Jia opened it to find a young Celestian girl standing there. She recognized her as Su Bin's daughter. "Ambassador Jada," the girl said formally. "I have a question about humans." "Come in," Jaya said. "What would you like to know?" The girl sat carefully on a chair. "My mother says humans are dangerous because they feel too much. But my teacher says feelings help us understand each other better. Who is right?" Jaya thought about how to answer. "They both are, in a way. Feelings can be dangerous if we don't understand them. But they're also beautiful and necessary. Without them, we're only half alive. Have you ever wished you could stop feeling again? Go back to how you were before? The girl asked. Jaya shook her head. Never, not even on the hardest days. After the girl left, Jaya stood at her window looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth spun in space, the planet that had changed everything for her. Once she had been ashamed of saying, "I crave humans, and I can't help myself." Now she understood it wasn't humans she craved, but the fullness of life they had shown her. Jaya picked up a paintbrush, a skill Taiho had taught her, and began to paint the night sky as she felt it, not just as she saw it. Across Celestia, thousands of others were learning to do the same, to see with their hearts as well as their eyes, to live fully again. The transformation had begun, and it would never end.